At 2:03 a.m., the air above Saransk, deep inside Russia, was calm enough to fool satellites. The factories slept, the streets breathed mist, and a convoy driver lit his last cigarette before clocking in. Routine, predictable, safe. Then a pressure flash punched through Warehouse 7, a silent pulse that split the night. Steel ribs bowed. Concrete shivered, and the grid sensors of Saransk Industrial Complex blinked from calm to catastrophic in a single frame. No missile trails, no roar from the sky, just an eruption from within. Before radar officers could even register the anomaly, 140,000 anti-tank mines stacked for shipment turned into their own ignition source. Flames tore upward through mezzanines, the blast painting the skyline in orange geometry. Inside, the Russian command grid alerts tripped across 5 districts, but none could identify the cause. The truth arrived seconds later, gliding through the fog. 48 Ukrainian UAVs, moving low and deliberate, followed canal beds and service roads as if they'd memorized the veins of the earth. Their rotors made no sound above a whisper. Their guidance systems ignored the chaos of 500-watt Craw-4 jammers blanketing the sky. They weren't flying blind, they were flying by memory. Each drone carried terrain vision AI mapping tree lines and rooftops against 7-point satellite tiles preloaded weeks earlier. They didn't need GPS. They didn't need signal. They only needed the ground. The defenders didn't yet know they were already under attack. At 2:05 a.m., the Panzer S-1 battery guarding the perimeter came alive. 12 missiles streaked skyward, then another 12. 24 interceptors, $5.4 million worth of tungsten and guidance-obliterated decoys made of foam fiberboard and recycled circuit chips. The radar officers cheered. 24 kills. Perfect defense. For 6 seconds, Russia believed it had won. Then the radar screens bloomed into madness. 30 false returns appeared at impossible bearings, altitudes colliding signal echoes, fluttering like ghosts. In that confusion, 4 real drones slipped through tucked behind the infrared signature of a supply truck that had been entering the gate every night for 11 days straight. The human guard hesitated. He'd heard alarms before, false positives triggered by fog wildlife or faulty sensors. His headset crackled. Convoy delayed. Open for rotation. Confirm. The voice was calm, familiar, routine. He pressed the release. The gate rolled open, and 4 drones drifted inside machines, no larger than suitcases painted in dull factory gray, their wings glistening with dew. The sentries didn't notice. The camera feeds blurred in vapor, the fog thick enough to swallow heat. By 2:10 a.m., those 4 drones were inside the heart of Russia's largest mine storage complex, moving like ghosts through the maze of loading lanes. Above them, the sky still burned with decoy smoke. Below, the world was seconds from understanding that the real strike had never come from the air, it had walked right through the front door. Inside Warehouse 7, 145, 200 live mines sat stacked across steel racks and automated conveyors. Replacement cost $9 million per week of production. At 2:10 a.m. and 40 seconds, the first strike drone hit, not from above, but from the seam between support beams designed to puncture the building's lungs instead of its armor. At 2:10 a.m. and 40 seconds, the first detonation blossomed, not a blast wave, but a pressure bloom that punched from the inside out. The Ukrainian strike drone had slid beneath Warehouse 7's main gantry, its warhead designed for structural puncture, not spectacle. A shaped charge lanced through panel seams and steel ribs, igniting confined heat that rolled through air ducts and feed lines. What began as a flash, no wider than a doorway, expanded into a rolling inferno across 4 mezzanine levels, stacked with over 140,000 mines. Inside, the facility's nervous system seized. Sensors tripped in spirals, heat motion voltage. Conveyor belts rated for 16 tons per cycle froze mid-motion, their servos locking under thermal surge. Automated gantries collapsed as torque rails twisted past tolerance. 48 robotic pick arms built to move ordnance with sub-millimeter precision froze in place. The factory's heartbeat, the B-14 control conduit, a data artery between storage and assembly, burned out in less than a second. Its redundancy B-16 feeder corridor followed moments later. The plant's internal intelligence was gone, cut off like a severed spine. Outside, the Panzer crews were celebrating their textbook defense. They didn't realize their system had entered a forced reset. Having fired 26 interceptors in 115 seconds, two beyond its design load, the launcher's hydraulics entered a 71-second cooling and realignment cycle, a mechanical blink at the worst possible time. When radar returns cleared, the swarm was gone. The defenders believed they'd stopped the attack. They didn't yet know that 4 drones had already passed beneath their radar horizon, riding the heat plume of a supply truck straight through the gate. At 2:11 a.m., the fire inside Warehouse 7 matured into full self-sustaining combustion. Mine casings ruptured, ignition compounds crossed safety thresholds simultaneously. It was not chaotic, it was perfectly synchronized, a chemical chorus of stored energy finding release. The roof did not collapse immediately. The structure held for 7 seconds, enough time for internal pressure to climb past tolerance and expel a shockwave that punched windows out of Warehouse 6 and 8 nearby. For the Russian quick reaction force, the timeline became impossible. They rolled through the outer gate in 36.9 seconds doctrine, perfect 3 armored transports, 1 mobile command pickup, 1 emergency drone carrier, engines, low sirens off. Their optics sought airborne targets expecting a rooftop threat or intrusion. Instead, their thermal cameras painted a surreal picture. No impacts, no craters, only a warehouse glowing from the inside, its temperature climbing past 89 degrees Celsius and rising. The perimeter was intact. The enemy wasn't outside, it was inside the machinery. At that moment, Warehouse 7 stopped being a building and became a reactor. Heat propagated along conveyor lanes and robotic tracks like neurons firing their last signals. Internal diagnostic programs attempted 7 restart cycles in 24 seconds, each failing under cascading alerts load, imbalance, thermal surge, structural compromise. The system's final log entry read simply, continuity lost. By 2:12 a.m., production ceased across the entire Saransk complex. From the outside, there was no cinematic collapse, no spectacular crater, just the mechanical stillness of surrender. A facility designed to produce 4,000 finished units per day now showed 0 throughput. Its sensors still transmitted heat but not function. It was a body alive enough to know it was dying. While flames licked the interior, the outside world caught up. Electronic warfare teams flooded the air with new jamming bursts, but they jammed their own communications as well. Radio chatter broke into static. BTR-82A patrols lost sync with Panzer crews. Commanders barked overlapping orders, but the network couldn't reconcile them. The defense grid had become its own interference. In a command trailer 2 kilometers away, an engineer stared at diagnostic feeds from Warehouse 7 and realized what had happened. The enemy hadn't overwhelmed the system, they had mirrored it. Every routine, every shift pattern, every supply schedule had been observed, recorded, and exploited. The enemy didn't need brute force, they needed familiarity. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian operators sitting hundreds of kilometers away watched a mosaic of feeds blur into static. Their mission timers confirmed success. The building's heat signature had crossed the failure threshold. They switched off transmitters, packed their control units, and vanished into the noise of civilian radio traffic. For them, the job was done. At 2:13 a.m., Saransk's industrial grid detected an unexplained power surge, then silence. The backup circuits tripped offline. The entire southern sector lost illumination for 9 seconds, long enough to shroud the final act. Inside the compound, automated fire doors slammed shut, locking in the inferno. The factory's own suppression system suffocated under power loss. In less than 10 minutes, what had taken Russia years to build its most secure mine assembly complex was no longer a production node, but a glowing tomb. The Panzer batteries finally reloaded and scanned the sky again, but there was nothing left to shoot. The attack hadn't targeted soldiers. It had targeted the rhythm of an entire industry and killed it with precision. By 2:12 a.m., the Saransk industrial zone was no longer a network. It was a nerve on fire. Every second that followed carried the precision of inevitability. Inside Warehouse 7, the chain reaction matured into physics made visible. The ceiling beams bent like Bose ducts ruptured, and conveyor tracks turned into molten veins. The floor plates, rated for 16 tons per cycle, heaved and snapped, sending shock waves through the substructure. Pressure rolled upward, meeting the resistance of reinforced roofing, and finding only one escape out. At 2:12 and 50 seconds, the heart of the warehouse exhaled. The blast vented through structural seams, hurling a shockwave that tore across Saransk's Sector B like a soundless hammer. Steel racks lifted shattered and fell in cascades. Automated pick arms, 48 of them, the pride of Russian industrial robotics, twisted into scrap. Conveyor belts froze, mid-motion gears fused under heat, and robotic servos burst in synchronized failure. The walls didn't crumble, they bowed outward, releasing compressed air and toxic fire in a rolling sigh. The effect was almost surgical. No mushroom cloud, no cinematic explosion, just a ripple of implosion, followed by silence that carried more weight than any blast. Outside, the quick reaction convoy was already on site. 3 Kamaz-E transports, 1 mobile command pickup, and a drone recovery vehicle. They'd reached the gate in 36.9 seconds faster than doctrine engines muted to avoid further confusion. But they arrived to a battlefield they didn't recognize. The perimeter was intact. The sky was clear, and yet the core of the facility glowed red, and climbing. Through thermal cameras, the lead vehicle watched the impossible heat blooming from within the warehouse's skeleton, not from any external hit. For a moment, even the defenders hesitated. They weren't under attack. They were watching their own fortress dissolve from the inside. At 2:13 a.m., internal sensors recorded cascading electrical failure. Control boards flashed every color of panic. Material hazard threshold exceeded. Load imbalance, structural integrity compromised. Then they went dark. Power relays tripped, backup systems faltered, and the plant's automation core fell offline. What had once been a proud symbol of precision manufacturing producing 4,000 units per day was now a self-contained furnace. The Panzer S1 battery, having completed its mechanical reset, stood ready for a target that no longer existed. The interceptors reloaded and armed faced an empty horizon. The radar's field of view displayed static, the electromagnetic echo of its own prior volleys. Operators scanned the void, waiting for another threat that would never come. Inside command centers across Mordovia, Oblast confusion rippled. Reports contradicted each other. Some claimed a direct missile hit, others blamed an internal explosion or a sabotage act. No radar logs showed an inbound strike. How could a fortress designed for redundancy implode without an enemy ever crossing its perimeter? By 2:15 a.m., the answer was already being written in light. Surveillance drones dispatched from Ruzevka airfield captured the aftermath, a building still standing, but glowing from within, a kiln consuming itself. Flames vented through roof seams, smoke rising in disciplined columns as ventilation shafts became chimneys. The truth hit the command staff like cold water. The air attack hadn't failed. It had succeeded by deception. The 48 drones that had entered Russian airspace were never meant to hit the same target. 44 were decoys, distractions for radars, jammers, and human instinct. Only 4 had ever been real, and those 4 had done what no missile could. They hadn't destroyed a structure. They had dismantled the illusion of control. Inside the facility, data logs continued to record in fragmented bursts. Line integrity B14 failure, B16 failure, routing capacity down 41.2%, robotic assembly lines offline, thermal limit exceeded, internal cameras captured frames of machinery dying in sequence like organs shutting down. By 2:17 a.m., the last operational gantry collapsed. The plant's interior turned to an unbroken field of heat. No workers could enter. Automated extinguishers melted. The blast doors sealed under system reflex, trapping the blaze inside. Across the region, power substations flickered. The facility's energy draw vanished from the grid, forcing rerouting in 4 neighboring districts. Civilian grids dimmed. Communications faltered. For 9 seconds, every screen tied to Saransk's industrial web went black. When power returned, one truth was written in every status window: continuity severed. The Russian military had not lost a building. It had lost a month of output. A facility worth $9 million per week in production value was gone. A regional supply chain feeding multiple fronts had gone silent. And all of it happened between 2:03 and 2:12 a.m. 9 minutes, 9 seconds of precision. A single act that reduced years of infrastructure to smoke. It wasn't an explosion that defeated Saransk. It was routine weaponized against itself. By 3:00 a.m., the flames over Saransk had dimmed to a dull orange pulse, but across the Russian command network, the shock was incandescent. Analysts combed radar data, searching for trajectories, missile trails, any hint of foreign launch signatures, and found nothing. The logs showed no entry points, no external strikes. To them, it was as if the factory had simply chosen to die. In Moscow, the first reports hit the General Staff Operations Center at 3:21 a.m. Words like sabotage and system malfunction circulated. The concept of autonomous penetration via unmanned systems sounded implausible to the old guard. Yet the heat map satellite images and blackout reports from Mordovia Oblast all told the same story, a self-contained inferno inside a facility considered impenetrable. For years, the Saransk munitions complex had been the pride of the Russian defense industrial spine, automated self-correcting, and defended by one of the densest EW and air defense grids in central Russia. But in 9 minutes, that fortress was undone not by overwhelming firepower, but by algorithmic patience observation and habit exploitation. Western analysts saw it differently. In Brussels, NATO's Cyber and Hybrid Warfare Division called an emergency session labeling the incident a case study in cognitive warfare. Intelligence from Kyiv hinted at a 34-night reconnaissance campaign mapping everything from guard rotations to humidity curves. To Western eyes, this was not sabotage, it was the birth of pattern-based strike doctrine, where victory emerges not from speed or mass, but from prediction and timing. In Washington, D.C., briefings at the Pentagon drew uncomfortable parallels. A classified memo circulated through EUCOM headquarters. The Saransk model demonstrates that habit, not hardware, is the modern vulnerability. It warned that every automated depot, every AI-assisted logistics hub in the West shares the same potential flaw, the assumption that predictability is efficiency. For Russia, the aftermath was worse than embarrassment. The loss of Warehouse 7 didn't just erase $9 million per week in output, it fractured confidence in the country's layered defense design. Engineers scrambled to upgrade infrared sensors, adjust patrol intervals, and harden access protocols, but the psychological crack was deep. Commanders ordered randomized gate schedules and unpredictable work shifts, human improvisation forced upon a system built for rhythm. Across Europe, defense contractors and military thinkers took notice. The term Saransk syndrome entered internal wargame lexicons, the point where complex defenses collapse not through destruction, but through the precision exploitation of routine. In London, one retired admiral phrased it bluntly on air. What fell in Saransk wasn't a factory. It was the illusion that machines can protect humans from their own predictability. And in Kyiv, while official spokesmen offered no confirmation, the message was clear through the silence. The strike wasn't just a blow to Russia's logistics, it was a statement. If you build war around routine, we'll turn your routine into a target. By dawn, the smoke over Saransk was fading, but the echo of that night was just beginning to travel. The future of warfare, it seemed, had shifted from dominance of firepower to mastery of pattern. The age of steel and speed had ended. The age of anticipation had begun. When dawn came over, Saransk, the smoke had thinned, but the silence remained heavy. What had once been Russia's most secure munitions complex was now a monument to its own complacency. Steel walls still stood, but inside them the system's heart had burned itself out. The strike at 2:03 a.m. wasn't about fire or flight. It was about timing. It proved that modern warfare is no longer fought only with missiles or soldiers, but with data, patience, and the art of predicting the human mind. For Ukraine, it was vindication, a victory measured not in distance gained, but in doctrine rewritten. For Russia, it was a revelation that defense without adaptability is just architecture waiting to fall. And for the United States and NATO, Saransk was more than an intelligence note, it was a mirror. The West's own defense networks built on efficiency and repetition now face the same haunting question: how predictable have we become? The battlefield of the future isn't a field at all. It's a pattern shaped by whoever learns fastest hides best and breaks routine first. If you believe understanding these unseen wars matters, like, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments. Do you think the next war will be fought with weapons or with habits? Because the night Saransk burned was more than an operation. It was a warning to every nation that thinks it cannot be surprised. The world has entered the age of anticipation.